Dear ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Nobel Peace Center. I want to bring the warmest congratulations to World Food Programme for receiving the Nobel Peace Prize of 2020. And I also want to congratulate and thank the Nobel Peace Prize Committee for an excellent choice. I want to congratulate humanity and all of us for this excellent prize. It's such a pleasure. We in the Nobel Peace Center is all about the Peace Prize, and what we are here for is to talk about the Peace Prize and use this as a platform to inspire and spread the word so that people can get engaged and inspired by all the good works of the Peace Prize laureates. And this year's prize is particularly important as we see it. And for myself, I must say, this is my first year as the director here at the Nobel Peace Center, and having had a future as in UNICEF, and also within CARE, where I served at the board here in Norway as a chair, and also at the CARE International's board. It's really, really heartwarming to see that World Food Programme has received this prize, because I know from the field how important their work is, and it's gotten even more important the last years. Today we're going to have a few things happening here. We're going to have what we call it. Avdukning. We're going to see the Diploma, and we're going to have a lecture by the chair of the committee, and we're also going to have a panel debate about the prize. So warmly welcome everybody. I hope you will enjoy the next good half hour. And first, Berit Reiss-Andersen, the chair of the Nobel Committee. Please welcome on the stage. And you're going to introduce the Diploma this year.
That is a pleasure. How should we do this, Vanessa? Should I reveal the Diploma?
Absolutely, I think it'd be a good idea.
And this is the Diploma for the Nobel Peace Prize 2020. Congratulations, Vanessa.
Thank you.
Before I let you make some comments to your fantastic contribution, I would like to say just a very few words about the tradition of the Nobel Peace Prize Diploma. Traditionally, it has been Norwegian artists who have made an illustration that is part of what we hand out to the Nobel laureate, the diploma and the gold medal. The hard cash we don't speak about at the ceremony, but there is a substantial money prize too. And when we assign an artist, the artist has absolute artistic freedom. But at the end of the day, it is the committee who also selects the diploma. And the past years, what we have done is to assign an artist for a period of time, and this is your third and last year as the Nobel laureate in-house artist. Mm-hmm. And I might say that as an artistic discipline, the Nobel Peace Prize Diploma is a very narrow discipline. And what is also important to emphasize is that the artist does not know who will be the annual laureate. First of all, because we cannot reveal it to anybody before we announce it, but it also gives the artist the freedom to express something on a more general and elevated level. And when I saw this draft, I have to admit that it brought my mind to the criteria in Alfred Nobel's will about peace congresses, which is hard work to make international agreements, settlements, negotiations, and I think you have captured that in an excellent manner, Vanessa.
Oh, thank you. Lovely. Nice words. So, then, just a few words. So obviously, I'm Vanessa Baird, and this it's the third year I've had this in a row to make the diploma. It's a watercolor, so it's a painting. I did find it a bit tricky. When I first started working on the diploma, it was in the spring and it's summer, and of course I didn't have the clue who the winner was. No one knows then, so not even the Nobel Committee, I believe. So I started off drawing a general diploma. It's very specific to a very specific receiver, which no one knows who is. So that's a little bit tricky. I found that tricky. Normally the work comes really easy, because I've been drawing all my life, so that's over 50 years now of drawing. But I get stuck sometimes. And then I panic. I look into the old bookshelf. I look into some old familiar books with familiar pictures or illustrations. It's a very nice way to get back on track. Imagine images of cups, pots, plates, chairs, paper, and tablecloths. So the daily life things. Maybe somebody has been sitting on the end of the table or at the corner pulling the tablecloth and thought about something extraordinary, or made a plan, or opened the window. Papers and notes are floating. The books that normally helps me out has helped me out for many different sort of when I'm stuck. It's, of course, the Winnie the Pooh. It's a great book. So I think that's what I have to say. So thank you and congratulations. And it's been nice 3 years working for you, but difficult and tricky, I have to admit. So thank you.
I believe you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Vanessa. Then, Berit, the floor is yours to explain and tell us all about the prize.
Thank you very much. They say break a leg for luck. I perhaps brought that a bit too far. So I would like to try to stand and speak to you, but I have a chair if it becomes too difficult. I will just give you a few reflections on this year's Peace Prize. When I announced it yesterday, we did make a breach with tradition, because I opened not by saying the traditional words, the Norwegian Nobel Committee has decided that, etc. But I did make a statement that the need for international solidarity and multilateral cooperation is more conspicuous than ever. And by doing that, we wanted to emphasize, what should I say, the wrapping paper of this year's Peace Prize. Of course, the World Food Programme is a very important organization that I will say more about in a little while. But it is an organization that belongs in a context exactly of multilateralism. When United Nations was founded after the disasters of World War II, it brought into the international community a new order of international law, regulations, and international organizations. There was a development from 1945 and well into the 60s with more and more international organizations and corporations across all kinds of fields. But the basis for this was, in fact, the Human Rights Charter and the point of view that humankind is not only a property of different national states, but that the basic needs for human beings is always an international affair. If a state mistreats its inhabitants, it cannot do it absolutely without interference, because by being human beings, we have certain basic rights. The right to life, and thereby also the right to food. And why did we press this issue today? Or yesterday? Because there has been a political shift from the optimism of international cooperation and to the flourishing of international organizations on every issue, from food security to culture to international courts, etc., etc. And now there has been a shift, the slow development the past 20 years, but more and more clear that many world leaders turned their backs to international cooperation because they would prefer to promote national interests, because they find international cooperation too costly, and they find that international organizations sometimes act and interfere across the political agenda of a particular leader. And that is exactly the point of international cooperation, that it is international and that there is a certain pressure between national interests and world solutions. Our most basic need, the right to food, that is connected to the right to life, the right to a dignified existence, is the object of the World Food Programme. And when we started to work with this prize, I have to admit, I was absolutely stunned and amazed of the numbers of people in the world today who actually starve. And these starving populations, or populations with food insecurity, they don't really take the world scene. They are anonymous, they don't really have faces, and World Food Programme, everybody knows about it, but it's not in our attention span very often. So what we wanted to emphasize with this prize is that we are one planet and we have certain obligations and duties as such. It is the responsibility for everyone that people are not starving. There's no people in the world who are deserving of food insecurity. And the World Food Programme has taken upon itself this enormous task. And why did we choose them this year? Yes, because they have, of course, been worthy of a Nobel Peace Prize for decades, I would say, carrying out their very important work. But the number of starving people that have received aid reached 135 million past year. And the food program has predicted that if the development continues as it is today, it will, in yet another year, reach 265 million people. It's an estimate. But there's about 320 million people in the United States. So as a reference point, it's almost up to the entire population of the United States. So tackling a growing problem was one reason for choosing the food program, particularly this year. But also the recent recognition of the connection between food and starvation, or to put it more correctly, starvation as a weapon, hunger as a weapon, that was recognized by the United Nations Security Council in 2018, Resolution 2417. And this is an enormous, important step forward, because hunger and famine is not only a result of mismanagement of food supplies, of agriculture, etc., but the predominant reason for hunger is exactly war and conflict. And hunger is used, calculated, as a weapon. Populations are starved out to leave an area. The agricultural infrastructure or other food producing facilities are destroyed to force people to leave and become refugees, migrants. And in warfare, taking control over food and food supplies, and even the World Food Programme's food supplies, you have a military upper hand. And this is tragic, but also in the recent year, hunger has a different and an additional cause, and that is the present pandemic. The massive closing down of communities worldwide means that a lot of people do not receive their paycheck, and they cannot buy food. The closing down because of the pandemic has affected agriculture and the production of food. Bringing food into communities in conflict has become increasingly difficult because of the pandemic and the restrictions in air travel and all kinds of other things that we are presently living under. So this has contributed to the problem of starvation and hunger, and the numbers are unfortunately just adding up. So when we select a Peace Prize laureate, we will of course select first and foremost to the criteria of the will of Alfred Nobel. And in the will, there is a basic criteria that the prize should go to the person or the organization that has contributed the most in the past year. So there is a criteria of being up to date. And of course, in this very, very special year of the pandemic, we wanted to give a response to that challenge that we are facing today. But a response to the challenge is not only a vaccine, that is a medical solution. The response to the challenge is to point out the multilateral responsibility that we all have. It is to point out that all people, not only those in poor parts of the world or people living in war and conflict, we are all vulnerable and we may all be victims. And our only security net is the international responsibility and response. And when we by this, we believe we answered all the criteria in Alfred Nobel's will. We have strongly emphasized the need for peace congresses, that is the criteria that supports international cooperation. The point of view that hunger is a joint humankind responsibility meets the criteria of fraternity between nations, and the very interesting point that I perhaps did not underline clearly yesterday is that this also has an aspect as a disarmament prize. If hunger is a weapon, by combating hunger, you are also combating war and conflict. So I feel that this prize is strongly within the will of Alfred Nobel. It is a very important prize to draw the attention to something we all know. We all know there are starving people around the world. And it's a very uncomfortable thought. And it is something we have a tendency to put aside and focus more on other current affairs, because it seems like such a magnificent problem that is impossible to solve. But it is possible to solve. It is possible to solve the way the World Food Programme works, because it's not only a relief organization, that is a very important part of its work, but the World Food Programme has developed ideas of sustainability, that food, the final solution of hunger is that you have to establish sustainable food chains. It has to be local, has to be accessible, and food is not always foodstuff. It can be medical equipment today, as masks, opening up schools and giving food, but also water, investing in agriculture, investing in food production. So the World Food Programme has shown a way. So I'm very, very proud and very happy that we have decided to give the Nobel Peace Prize of 2020 to this very deserving organization that really responds to the major challenges of peace and security today. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Berit. How is your leg doing? Do you want to sit down?
I would like to sit down now, thank you.
You said you were very happy and very proud. So am I, about this prize. And we so much look forward to working and focusing on these topics the next month, next year, because there's so much, as you said, we need the focus of international solidarity, the magnitude of starvation and lack of food, and well, all the topics you mentioned. But I have one question, and then I'll open for the floor to ask questions. Was it difficult to decide about this prize this year?
It's always difficult, I assure you. And did you really expect me to answer it was easy?
But it seems so obvious now when you're talking about it, because
yes,
I mean,
but that is exactly part of the process, because when we start out with our 320-something candidates that we had this year, of course there's quite a few you just put aside and said this is not interesting, but there are several, there's quite a bit large number of candidates that we seriously consider. And it is my experience that when you start this process in February, by the time you come to August, September, the world is not the same. It's always changing. So what seemed obvious in February has changed by May, and then even changed more by September. But when you have gone through the difficult process of having pros and cons to many candidates, in the end, and this was particularly strong this year, there's a kind of relief, because everything just seems so right and falls into place for exactly this candidate. So in that sense, yes, it was easy.
and it must have been very, very, I mean, the change within this year from February, because February, the world looked quite different than it did in March and what it looks like now. So it must have been a very interesting year for you to...
A very challenging year.
Yeah, I can imagine. Any questions from the audience? Please feel free. You have the chair of the Nobel Committee. You can ask some questions. Anyone from the audience out there? We have many viewers, actually also online. We are streaming this event, so it's possible to send us questions via Twitter. So please, if you have any questions. While you're thinking about that, I can perhaps ask you another question. I have many. It seems to me that the reception from media has been very positive. Is that because it's, well, that's not usual, is it? With so anonymous positive feedback and response? Is it because it's dull and unimportant?
Well, I think the reaction really underlines what I just spoke about, that the problem of hunger, nobody is against solving it. It is a unanimous attitude. This is an abhorrent problem. We have to deal with it and do something about it. But we have a tendency to push it away. And of course, the fact that millions of people are suffering from starvation is not boring. It is a very serious fact. And I hope that this Peace Prize is a reminder that it is a personal and individual responsibility for all of us to feel a responsibility for other people. And I feel that so strongly when I see children. If you go into a kindergarten and you tell a story about that there are actually children who are loved by their parents, but they have to go to bed hungry, they are very connected to that, and they understand it intuitively and engage themselves, as they did here today. The prize is absolutely uncontroversial when it comes to the topic of hunger, but it might still be politically controversial because with the prize, we do call for financing, responsibility, international cooperation, and engagement. And when you come to that bottom line, I do not believe that every world leader will say hallelujah to this prize.
So for the next year, we're going to have a lot of emphasis and focus on this. And we want to do what we can do to try and put focus on all of these aspects. And I think to connect with people in all countries would be very important to help raise awareness about this issue. So thank you so much for this very, very important prize and giving us the chance to put focus on this. Any questions?
Thank you very much. I think it's great that this organization received the prize this year. And obviously, as you mentioned, the awareness will be raised for this issue considerably. Do you also expect, or did you discuss in the committee, any specific action to develop in the future because of this raised awareness for this issue?
Well, it is very important to understand the role of the committee. We are executors of a will to give an award to people who actually are out there in the world, in the field, and contributing to peace as activists, as doing steady work through organizations, disarmament, etc. So it must be understood, we are not the doers, we are the rewarders. So we are not activists. We are invited all the time to be engaged in all kinds of issues, which we are in a sense, but only in the capacity of trying to single out who has given such an exceptional contribution that they are deserving of our reward. So I think that is important. But we do make political statements because we have a mandate in the will of Alfred Nobel to promote exactly these values of fraternity between nations, peace congresses and disarmament. And we use the prize for that. And we have this year highlighted the political consequence of this prize exactly by the opening statement I made yesterday.
That was very interesting. Thank you so much, Berit, for a very interesting explanation that you've given us and for the good answers that we also got. Now we're going to have a panel explaining more about this issue. So to lead this panel, I want to... is it okay? You're doing fine? Yeah. I want to introduce our own Ingvild Rambøll, and she will lead the discussion with a very prominent panel, I think. So the floor is yours, Ingvild.
Thank you so much, Kjersti. According to the will of Alfred Nobel, the Nobel Peace Prize can be shared between 2 or 3 individuals. This year, the prize has been given to 18,000 people working to provide food to people who suffer from starvation all across the world. And one of them is actually with us here today. Hello, Kervin Fleischer. You're joining us from Damascus in Syria. You are country director in Syria for the World Food Programme. First, congratulations on the Nobel Peace Prize 2020. How was yesterday?
Thank you, Ingvild, and thank you, Berit. What an advocate for the people we serve. Every word you said speaks and puts the focus on these people. But how was yesterday? Well, a wave of joy, of enthusiasm, of satisfaction, of fulfillment went through our whole organization. From our boss, David Beasley, who currently is in Niger, to every staff in the 80 countries or more that we work. There were messages, there were emails, and here in Syria, I have to acknowledge, people hugged each other despite COVID. It was just too much. So we feel this is a recognition to the hard and often dangerous work that we do on the front lines of hunger. People put their lives on the line to save lives of others. And so it's on second thought, obviously we were humbled, and it's a rewarding experience to receive this prize, not just for us, but for all the partner organizations who distribute food with us across the world, for governments, for donor governments, for private sector governments who as passionately and as tirelessly, do everyone at their level what they can. And if I may, lastly here in Syria, it is a recognition to our Syrian colleagues and the colleagues of our partner organizations who have seen their beloved country fall into ruins. Yet they come every day to work, to save lives and help people get back on their feet.
As we heard the chair of the Nobel Committee say, the number of people suffering from acute hunger is on a steady growth. How are you noticing that when you work in Syria right now?
Well, let me start with an encounter I had in one of my recent trips through the country in Aleppo. A woman came to me, thanking me. She said, "You have, because of you, me and my family, we have survived. If we had not received your monthly food parcel over years, we would not have made it." So we are supporting 5 million people in Syria, and the World Food Programme across the world is supporting over 100 million people. And so first, we see this as a recognition to the invaluable service that WFP is rendering to humanity. But let me give you another story to answer your question. I was a week ago in the northeast of Syria, which is the Kurdish area. And at one of our distribution points, a woman approached me with a plea to give her a food parcel. She is not on our lists. She said, I cannot survive without receiving your food. I need to eat. I have 2 children. And she lost her job because of COVID. And it was heartbreaking because we cannot include her into our lists because we do not have the funds. So her and millions of people across the world, need us to put the focus on them. And this is a call, for all of us to do more, wherever we can, us in WFP, but donors to do more so that we can help the 690 million people who are food insecure. And as Berit said, those with acute food insecurity. We are concerned that this number will rise by 80% from 135 to 260 million people.
As you said, the prize announcement was also a kind of a call to action for the donors. And that, I think, is a key word to our next guest, because we are joined also by Director General of NORAD, the Norwegian Agency for Development Cooperation, Bård Vegar Solhjell. Welcome.
Thank you.
Why is this year's Nobel Peace Prize an important one, do you think?
Well, first, let me congratulate briefly both the laureate and the committee with a wise choice. I think it's important in 2 somewhat different ways. And firstly, because it emphasizes international cooperation. And I had planned to say that I noticed the first sentence of the committee leader's announcement, but now she has explained it herself. But let me add that in emphasizing international solidarity and cooperation, I think this was a smart choice, because this is a form of international cooperation which is rather uncontroversial. Very few people have anything against food support and the work the WFP does. And it also shows that there is actually a lot of international cooperation that works and is going on right now. And I think that's important. The other part is, of course, the relevance, like we already heard from Corinne Fisher and from the committee leader. Right now, more people than in a long time is food insecure and suffers of acute hunger, partly because of the many conflicts, but mostly, or most importantly, because of COVID-19, or rather because of the effects of the lockdowns and so on after the COVID-19 virus. And that will not go away by itself. So that's why it's also a very relevant prize in my view.
And do you think also that it will help the funding of the work that WFP is doing?
Well, I certainly hope so, because it's needed. And I also noticed that what I also looked upon as a kind of a call to action. For NORAD and the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, many people were really glad because, of course, we're a proud partner of the World Food Programme. Norway is actually the 4th biggest donor of core support or flexible support, not in relative terms, but in absolute terms. And the World Food Programme, along others, I should add, are extremely important right now. And just to briefly exemplify, a lot of people during the last few decades have been able to to climb out or get out of extreme poverty, so that they can barely manage their everyday life. But when tourism closes down, right, when food stalls go away, when war hits like in Syria, that security vanishes. And a lot of people face acute hunger. And that's when it's so important to be able to give humanitarian assistance, but also to build those kinds of long-term food systems that can make a real and lasting difference.
Corinne, you're still with us. What are your hopes when it comes to the effect that the Nobel Peace Prize could have on your work?
Well, really, we hope that we will have the funds not only to support the people we support now, but all those that need our help. And honestly, we also hope that, receiving and then putting the focus on peace, and that this is a call to stop conflict. I mean, it's a reminder for all of us, coming from your institute and from the Nobel Peace Prize, that how much food security and peace and stability go hand in hand. We cannot achieve the global goal of zero hunger without peace. And also, peace cannot prevail unless we stop hunger.
Thank you so much. Good luck with your work, Corinne Fleischer. Give our regards to all your colleagues there and in the other 80-something countries you're operating. And good luck with your work. Thank you for joining us. Thank you, Bård Vegar, for joining us. And I will now welcome 2 other people to our stage who will elaborate a little bit more on the connection between food and peace, as we just heard Corinne talking about. I will be joined by our in-house Nobel Peace Prize expert, Toril Rokseth. She is Director of Program here at the Nobel Peace Center. She is joined by Ruth Haug, Professor of Development Studies at the Norwegian University of Life Sciences, and an expert on food security and international food policy. Welcome, Ruth Haug.
Thank you.
You were among those celebrating yesterday, Ruth.
Oh, yes, very much. I was so happy, and I'd like to warmly congratulate the World Food Programme. I think that was an excellent choice. Thank you to the committee leader for that choice.
Toril, I want to start with you, because we've heard about Alfred Nobel earlier today. We've heard about his will and the criteria he sets for what kind of work that can be awarded with the Nobel Peace Prize. He mentions 3 things: disarmament, peace congresses, and fraternity between nations. How does this year's Peace Prize fit into that picture?
Well, our big boss, main boss, Berit, just explained this for us very wonderfully. But I can just add that, yes, it does fit all three criteria. But I think in our programming here at the Nobel Peace Center, this following year, I think we would focus on the fellowship between nations, or the fraternity between nations, because I think we need to, because for people to not only intellectually understand this, but connect with it, as Berit also mentioned, I think that's our main focus. So, because when we see the work that the World Food Program is doing to secure food, but we also see that this has a positive effect on education and job opportunities. So all this in sum, I think we can really see that this is a contribution to fellowship between nations. Yeah.
And Ruth, with your, I think it's about 30 years of experience working with food security, what can you say about the connection between hunger and food insecurity and peace and stability on the other side?
Yeah, I can very much endorse what has already been said when it comes to the very close link between hunger and peace, war, conflict. And I think that connection is very much in two areas. First, when it comes to that more and more people, food insecure people, live in countries with protracted crisis. Now it's around 60%, and it has been going up and up. So when we have a war, people become poorer and more hungry. That is unfortunately what happens basically always. When it comes to the link regarding to what degree hunger and famine contributes to conflict, that might happen sometimes, but not always. So there, we have to look at the context, and also because there are so many factors. I mean, it's not only hunger, famine. There are so many other factors also playing a role. But overall, the link between hunger, peace, conflict is really strong.
As Berit mentioned, food and the inaccessibility to food can also be a weapon used in conflict. Can you explain that to us? How that
yeah, we have seen that so many times, and I think Syria, we just heard from Korean, Syria is really one of the very recent examples where we see how the civilians, how parts of towns where half of the population get access to food, the other half do not, according to who is controlling that area. So it's devastating. But you also can take other examples where you see how small-scale farmers are being robbed from their crops, or their fields have been burned and they've been chased away. So I think what Berit said yesterday about to control the food very often also control very many other things in a conflict is so true.
And in that manner, this prize goes into a tradition in the Nobel Peace Prize history, Toril, in pointing out different aspects where power can be used and misused in conflict.
Absolutely,
Is that right?
Absolutely. We saw that also last year with the Nobel Peace Prize to Denis Mukwege and Nadia Murad, how sexual violence was used as a weapon in war. So absolutely. And I just want to add that we had our Children's Peace Club here this morning, and when we asked them, how do you feel when you're hungry? And they answer, angry. And I think that sums it up pretty well. And the Nobel Peace Prize laureate from 1949, I think, John Boyd Orr, he also said, nobody can make peace on empty stomachs. So I think the link that you've explained so well is we can see that through history. Maybe we can say that the French Revolution and the Arab Spring also had this element in them. So this is for us to just learn from history and act upon it, I think.
And we've heard it today and we heard it yesterday, the number of starving people in the world is on the rise. Why is that, Ruth? Can you explain?
Yeah, the last 5 years, the trend has going in the wrong direction in spite of the Sustainable Development Goals, having zero hunger as the target in 2030. So we have seen that rise, and there are basically 4 reasons, I would say. One is definitely conflict, protracted conflict, war, one very important reason. Then it's climate change. Then it's the economic downturns. I mean, this is very much about the economy, because there is more than enough food in the world to feed everybody. If we only were able to get the distribution to be more just. But still, there are so many people going hungry. So the fourth one is that we are not really able to act. I mean, hunger now, we get more focus on it, great, but it's not a new phenomenon. I mean, I started for so many years ago, and we are talking about the same thing. So I really hope now that the question that was asked earlier here today, that this recognition of hunger as a huge problem that we can solve, and we have to solve it together.
Yes, how is that? How is the experience of the effect that the Nobel Peace Prize can have, Toril? Can it help?
Yes, it can. It can help. It certainly puts focus on a topic that we should focus on, of course, and it needs our attention. And that is maybe the main thing, the main effect. And for some laureates, for example, Lech Walesa, he said that this prize was a protection for me all through my life. And so it can have different effects, but mainly the focus that we really need to shift from focusing on only on ourselves to this globalism that Berit pointed on.
And I spoke to Corinne yesterday to invite her to be with us today. She said that I don't think everybody in the world had heard about us before, but after this, I think they will know who we are. And that is an important effect of the Nobel Peace Prize as well.
Absolutely.
You were mentioning 4 reasons for the rise of hunger, but you did not mention the corona pandemic.
No, that was the 4th. Then I spoke too much that I forgot, which is now, of course, the most important reason why there is this huge jump this year. We don't know how big it will be. I myself expected that it would be worse in Africa, for example. It is still horrible, the pandemic, but it could have been even worse there. So we don't know exactly the numbers, but one forecast is a doubling of the number of acute hungry people. It's really so devastating because it comes on top of everything else, the conflict, the climate change, the locust. I mean, there are so many problems, and then you get this in addition, and people are already so vulnerable, living from hand to mouth. So these lockdowns, when you can't go to work, I mean, how to recover from that? And that's why the World Food Programme is so important, because they are really, really able to get people to get over these horrible impacts of the pandemic.
And one thing is the economic recession, but the pandemic has probably also made it more difficult to provide help, because it's difficult to travel, it's difficult to export things. How important is that effect?
Yeah, that is really important, because just take one thing as school meals in schools when the schools are closed. I mean, and you can't go to the health station. I mean, there are so many additional problems because of the pandemic. So to recover from that and maybe be more resilient and prepared next time, because there will be something else at some times coming up that we are not prepared for. So I think also the World Foods program work very well on preparedness and helping countries to be more prepared for different kind of disasters.
And another thing the pandemic has shown us is that a crisis can also affect us living in the privileged part of the world. Do you think, Toril, that fact could make it easier to talk to people about hunger? I mean, we've been talking about the hunger problem for decades. Are we more receptive now?
It might. It's a strange fact that maybe that was needed for us to understand more of the globalism and being one world parts. Maybe we have to think this through to find our creative and good ways into people's minds and hearts. Yeah.
That's a question to you, Ruth. Can food insecurity come to our parts of the world as well? How can we be affected?
I mean, we never know. It's so much uncertainty. And when I'm saying there is more than enough food in the world today at global level, not national, local level, but that might not be the case 10 years from now. We don't know. We don't know what crisis will come. We need to also to be prepared in our part of the world. But maybe I could add one thing to that whole global question you asked. I think that what the World Food Programme is doing is great, and they are fixing what very often other people have messed up. But then you have all the structural injustice, the underlying cause of hunger, that it's difficult to fix with humanitarian action and assisting with preparedness and so on. So to really be able to address that structural injustice that cause hunger to continue decade after decade, that's where we really have a huge, huge challenge ahead of us.
And that's maybe why the word international solidarity was mentioned even before food, when we received the news about the new Nobel Peace Prize laureate yesterday. Thank you so much for joining us, Ruth Haug and Toril Rokseth. And thank you all for watching this celebration of the 2020 Nobel Peace Prize. Stay tuned. We will have more celebrations coming up later. Thank you for today. Bye-bye.